On tap, real estate guru Dani Babb. She's back. We love her. National Community Reinvestment Coalition CEO, also here, John Taylor. They're going to both join me in the Diamond District for the latest foreclosure rescue plan. And is gold the only sound investment out there? The guys are going to have the answer next in Quick Shots. Fox Business Alert, stocks tumbling today as General Motors and Chrysler submit their survival plans. Banks also dragging stocks down ahead of Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner's next stab at a fix, hopefully, for the banks. Several banks are already taking foreclosure time outs. But what about refinancing? That's very important as well. Middle-income homeowners are complaining that all the help is going to lower-income homeowners. Meanwhile, there are also reports that folks are not deliberating paying mortgages, or are deliberately, not paying their mortgages because they expect some government help. Dani Babb is back in the Diamond District. She is author of the great book. It's called The Accidental Landlord. And John Taylor is CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. Dani, well, first let's hit on this. These reports coming out that people are deliberately not paying their mortgage payments so they can be behind and be in this favored group when the government does come out with its homeowner plan, so they can, you know, some of their mortgage be wiped out or get a super low interest rate. Yeah, that's true. We've been seeing that since last summer when the banks first started rolling out their own plan. And actually, it's still occurring. I talked with Wachovia this morning, who's, of course, now owned by Washington Mutual, I believe, or Wells Fargo. And they told me that the first group that's getting refinance or modifications are those that are delinquent. But starting in 4 to 6 weeks, they're going to start targeting those loans that look like they could become delinquent based on certain criteria. The home being underwater, or also the mortgage being the type that they don't want, a pay option on, for example. Right, right. I mean, but how do these banks then determine that someone is legitimately having problems paying their mortgage versus someone who's trying to scam the bank? Well, the rule is you have to submit 30 days of pay stubs and one bank statement. You don't have to submit documentation of assets or anything else that you can liquidate. So far, with 7 banks, none of them have asked for any documentation that you have some capital. Right. So there are people faking it, and we're hearing reports. Some banks are estimating as many as 25% of people that are not paying or doing it intentionally. Let's bring in John into this discussion. John, so let's move now toward the refinancing. You know, they're saying that, hey, just the low-income people who really, you know, say they were making $40,000 and took out a $600,000 mortgage with one of these teaser rates, those are the only folks being helped when, you know, how you have middle-income America who's still paying their mortgage but needs some help, and they're not getting refinancing. The banks are just passing them by.
Yeah, actually no one's being helped. I mean, very few. I mean, when you look at the magnitude of the problem, anyone who has been helped, and I don't think it's been exclusively low income by any stretch, but it's just been a fairly small number of people relative to the size of the problem. And that's... I mean, we've had 1.5 million foreclosures in the since the recession began, and we're now looking at, depending on who you listen to, Credit Suisse, others, right, 10 to 13 million more foreclosures. So I don't think people are heading towards foreclosure to get a better deal, especially because nobody knows what the deal is going to be. And thus far, the government really hasn't stepped up and helped homeowners. Okay, and what do you think about this? You know, the government tomorrow is going to come out. The president's going to be there in the Phoenix area to unveil his home foreclosure program. What are you looking for? What do you think he should say? Well, I think he should take a lot of lessons from what Secretary Paulson did and do exactly the opposite and really focus on stopping many of these foreclosures as possible, in particular helping those, as you were just talking about, those who are still working, who can afford to pay on their mortgage, but are just a little underwater. But if the mortgage was just adjusted, they could be able to continue paying. Right, I think, so I think hopefully that's where the administration is going to go. But if they don't do a purchase program, everybody who's been involved in this issue from the beginning, are saying they got to buy these loans. You got to buy these loans that have them modified.
John, let me get Danny's perspective before we run out of time.
Yeah, I disagree with some of what John's saying, strictly because a lot of people, unless they're willing to actually get a modification that reduces their principal, even if they're getting a payment that's workable for them, they're still not going for it. And so that tells me there's a lot of people out there that are, not paying attention to the moral hazard here and just trying to do what we call buy and bail, which is already buying their next home, letting the other one go into foreclosure, waiting 7 years, and they're starting over. And we are seeing that in the market.
That's always the risk there.
That sounds good, Danny, but we deal with a lot of the people who are actually in foreclosure. We run a program. We work with a lot of organizations that do, and we don't run into these people. We run into people who basically they bit off more than they can chew. They got a toxic loan, a predatory loan. It grew in interest rate. They couldn't refinance. The housing value dropped. They're stuck, and they're really underwater. And that's more typical than this example that you keep referencing.
John Taylor, CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, and Dani Babb. And folks, just remember that tomorrow the president is going to be in Phoenix, signing what they hope will be a foreclosure assistance program. Thanks so much, Dani.
Thank you.